I'm going to explain to you why we're stuck on a hamster wheel, which is the way I describe things in this country, where things never really seem to change, right? It doesn't matter what party's in office. Now, there's some people who take that reality and they go too far. They try to act as if it doesn't matter who's in office, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. That's an insane thing to say, especially for people who acknowledge right now how bad things are currently. Um, the level of destruction we're seeing in the country right now is abnormal. This country has been dysfunctional for quite some time, but this is not just the normal dysfunctional. This is on a whole nother level, and it's just getting worse day by day. But on the hamster wheel, we recognize and acknowledge that, and we just operate as spectators with no plan for how to make things better, no understanding of why things are the way they are, why it seems like it doesn't matter if Democrats or Republicans win, certain things don't really change. Now, obviously, as I stated, some things definitely change, and right now, for the worst, a lot of things, but even as these things are happening, there's certain fundamental things that are not really changing. Cost of living is still going up, housing in particular. Housing is still, healthcare rather, is still as much an issue as it was. Of course, some would acknowledge that it's actually worse to some degree, but the general sentiment is there that healthcare is expensive. Many people don't have healthcare. And whether the Democrats win or Republicans win, this seems to be the case. So here is the design of the hamster wheel, a dance that is, done with the both parties. Both parties are not the same. One party is much, much worse than the other. It's not even close. However, they do have this sort of symbiotic relationship where you can't have one without the other. Democrats can't win elections without crazy Republicans. Crazy Republicans can't get elected without weak Democrats. So, one of the big flaws is our reluctance to recognize what's happening, like right in front of our eyes, and take mental notes and grow. For example, I don't hear anyone talking about what's happening in this moment. There's a lot of dialogue about different things. Trump in his ballroom, whatever it is, inflation, whatever. Trump voters were regretting their vote. But I don't hear anyone talking about a dynamic that's happening right now that I had talked about and predicted. Not because I'm a genius, it's because it's obvious. Which is that Democrats are on a path right now to win the House and potentially the Senate. Think about that. They're very, very unpopular, right? The last presidency that they had, they definitely underdelivered. Now, because people have been so broken in this country, people would not recognize how much they underdelivered because they're used to getting next to nothing. So you give them a little something, and it's like, whoa, this is a historic presidency. But I don't look at things that way. Like, I'm not a reactionary. That's a reactionary approach, right? If I see a building on fire, right, and I see people with like water guns trying to put the fire out, which is a joke, and then I see another guy coming with like, I don't know, 16-ounce bottles of water, or even 20-ounce bottles of water, throwing it on the fire and moving aggressively, like boom, he's spraying, this water, from this bottle. Now, he's putting massively more water on the fire than the guy with the water bottle, right? So if I have a very reactionary perspective, like a lot of people in this country do, I see a lot of people on the left, like Kyle Kulinski, for example, who says Biden did more than he expected. I look at the guy with the 20-ounce bottle, and I say, man, wow, I'm surprised. I'm used to people coming with like a little water gun and spraying, little bit of water. It's like not doing anything. And here's this guy with this 16 ounces of water, like, and he's really, really hustling. But the building is on fire. It's halfway burnt down already, right? So, relative to the problem, this is a failure for both people that approach this. The guy with the water gun and the guy with the 20-ounce water, even though they're really hustling, Either one is not really addressing the problem. Now, obviously, the guy with the more water, he's putting out more of the fire. You could even you do the math, like 5 times the amount of the fire is being put out. But ultimately, in the scale of things, it's net zero. It's like what's the net effect is that the building is pretty much doomed, right? That is what we got from Democrats, right? That's what we got from Joe Biden, right? And very small-minded people look at that and they compare it to what other presidents did, and they're like, "This is great." I don't care about what other presidents did, right? I don't care about rhetoric and what's the cool thing to say and where everybody's go. I care about this building is half burnt down. We need massive amounts of water. People say, "Well, where's the water? We're in a desert, whatever." I don't want to hear about excuses. I mean, do what you can while you can, but I'm not going to celebrate 20 ounces of water on a building that's halfway burnt down, right? I'm going to say we need to find solutions, right? I know we're in a desert, but can we do this? Can we do that? And if there's not a process of constantly trying to find solutions, and first of all, acknowledging that what we're doing is inadequate. That's the whole thing. If we're celebrating the 20 ounces of water thrown in the fire, that's a problem, right? You can acknowledge that that's a big improvement, but in the same token, you should be, like really aggressive, like, wow, this is not enough. We need more. We need more. We need more. We need more. Like that's the way I look at things, right? So when you look at things from that perspective, Democrats didn't really do much in the last, when they were last in power. And as a result of that, partially a result of that, Trump won once again, right? Trump gets in power, he does a bunch of craziness. And as a result of him doing all these crazy things, that allows the Democrats to, even though they're very unpopular, to sweep, right? And then once they get in power, what are they going to do? They're going to do what's always been working, what works. Like Democrats win all the time. Republicans win all the time. These parties never lose, right? When the Democrats sweep, right, and they win, let's say they win the House and the Senate, you think the Republicans are going to lose? No. The top Republicans will still be getting six-figure salaries, still making millions of dollars, they still have power, a different kind of power, still have influence, they still have like crazy benefits. They'll still be insider trading, and they won't have to actually do much work because they're out of power. So like, well, what can we do? We're out of power. We don't have any power. We can't do anything like what the Democrats do, right? And that's the game, right? You get in power, you do just the bare minimum, you find excuses. When you get out of power, you're still employed, you're still in government, you haven't really lost, you're still getting taxpayer dollars, right? But now you have a better excuse. Now you can really now you can go on vacation. Just do some tweets online, hey, we gotta save democracy or whatever it is, right? Look online, see what's popular, and you say the phrases or whatever. And then if somebody really presses you, you're like, listen, man, you need to vote for more Democrats because we can't do anything. We're in the minority. What do you expect us to do, right? As soon as you get back a majority, then all of a sudden you make some motion like you're trying to do something like, oh, we're working on this and that and that. You stop talking about the things that you really don't want to do, right? A lot of Americans don't even notice, don't even care because they're all focused on their lives and social media's gotten distracting them. Progressive media talking about whatever, oh, this and that and the Republican and look what these conservatives do, whatever, right? So while they're all distracted, you don't recognize like, wait a minute, I voted for this person to do this X, Y, and Z, and they're not even talking about it anymore. What's going on, right? So they switch and bait, right? And then as a result of that, people get frustrated. They get sucked up into the Republican Party, who points out these failures in a dishonest way. But they like, listen, man, has your life gotten any better since the Democrats were in office? And people are like, no, not really. And it's like, why are you voting for them? I mean, of course, the logical question is, okay, but why would voting for you help? I mean, I voted for Democrats and I didn't get anything, but what would make me believe that voting for you would somehow help, right? But people don't think that deeply, right? They just, you can just distract them and like, hey, look over here, look, the Democrats aren't doing anything, and they're like, oh, vote for us, and then they'll vote for this person, and then they get in office and they build a ballroom and they're giving taxpayer dollars to their allies and friends and doing insider trading. The president got all this trading stuff he's doing, right? And then the voters are like, oh man, this is not what I voted for or whatever, right? But next election, a DeSantis or a Tucker Carlson or somebody like that can come in, play the same game. Oh yeah, we got this and that and woke this and the trans whatever, and they'll vote for that person. That person will again screw them over and do some craziness, which Democrats will use to win the next election because they look, the Republicans, look what they're doing, and that's what it is. That's the game, right? Republicans get in office, they do craziness, chaos, whatever it is. Democrats sit back and point fingers and say, "Oh, look what they're doing," da da da, and then people are genuinely terrified about what the Republicans are doing, so they vote for the Democrats. Hopefully, hope and change, and then hope and change never comes. So you have this continuous cycle of people that are falling by the wayside, that are falling behind, and they're not being protected, but yet somehow they're able to be convinced by these corrupt politicians to keep voting for them. And I think part of the problem also is the main bases are like these diehards, right? So it's a tribal thing. So there are many people are becoming like disaffected voters where they just like give up. They're like, it doesn't make any sense to vote, doesn't make a difference, right? So they're out of the pool. So who's left? The most aggressive, the most partisan, the most tribal of them all. They end up being the only ones who are voting. And who do they vote for? Partisan lunatics, right? And that's why we just constantly, we're gonna always be losing. Now that's not an absolute statement. There's some things that we gain ground on here and there, but ultimately things don't really change that much. They certainly don't change as much as they need to, and this is the reason for it. And a big part of why things are that way is because we allow it, right? We give our votes for free, and then when somebody gets in office that we voted for and they work for us, basically, we allow them to just slack off and do whatever, because all we do is, if we show up at all, we show up for election day and we vote and then we go home and that's it. We're not involved. We're absentee managers in this country. And nowhere else does that work. There's no other system where you have someone working for you and you don't supervise them at all and things work out. But for some reason, we feel like we can just vote for politicians. We think they're Jesus or something, right? And they're just going to naturally do the right thing, as opposed to they're only going to do what we force them to do, right? So because we elect these people and then we just go on vacation for 4 years, and then 4 years later we're upset, and then we go vote for another person, then we go on vacation. So every 4 years we just show up and we vote for someone, and then we don't manage them, and then we're confused as to why things are the way they are. I mean, why don't you try this system anywhere else and see if you get different results, right? Start a company, hire people, right? You scrutinize them in the hiring process, and then once you hire them, you just like go on vacation, right? See how that works out for you. And if it doesn't work out for you in your business, it doesn't work out for you anywhere else, what makes you think it will work out in our politics, right? So Americans will always lose because Americans will always choose to lose or choose to allow themselves to lose. I mean, I think the more fair take is that they are not aware, many, about how things actually work. And one of the reasons for that is because their thought leaders are people who are very unserious, who are not with them, who are focused on clicks and views, getting attention. They're not really in it with the American people. So these influencers online, YouTubers, if that's where you're getting your thoughts from, well, there you have it.